So after everything we've witnessed, from the strategic maneuvering in Scotland to the shattering cries from Gaza to the heartbreak bleeding out in a Walmart aisle, you begin to see the pattern. The thread weaving these tragedies together is not just violence, it's abandonment. A world where those with the most power, the loudest microphones, the longest titles, have turned their backs on the very people who need them most. Because while cameras follow former presidents and current prime ministers, and while governments debate ceasefires like poker hands, the people are out here trying to survive. And I'm not just talking about financial survival, although that's real. I'm talking about emotional survival, mental survival, moral survival. And the ones falling through the cracks, they're the most vulnerable among us. You see, true leadership isn't about who gets invited to the next summit or who trends on social media after a fiery speech. It's about this: who are you protecting? Because if your policies don't shield the single mother trying to raise 3 kids on a minimum wage, if your decisions don't provide safety to a Palestinian child whose home was just bombed, if your priorities don't include the mentally ill man who had nowhere else to go but a Walmart with a weapon, then I'm sorry, but you're not a leader. You're just another performer on the world stage, and your script is tired. We've glorified leadership so much that we've forgotten its purpose. It's not to be admired, it's to serve. And right now, there are far too many leaders who are protecting their political futures while ignoring the bleeding present, who are shaking hands in Scottish castles while hands in Gaza dig through rubble, who are debating budgets while families in America are praying their children make it home from school, from work, from the grocery store. And let's talk about system. Because it's not just individuals, it's the institutions that have been built to serve the powerful, often at the expense of the powerless. In Gaza, international diplomacy has failed for decades. It's failed to stop the bombs. It's failed to hold anyone accountable. It's failed to say enough. And here at home, we see the same thing: a system that looks the other way when communities cry for help, that throws money at militarization but leaves mental health centers understaffed, schools underfunded, and neighborhoods underprotected. And I've seen it up close. I've walked through towns that the government forgot. I've sat in living rooms where mothers tell me they've stopped calling the police because it's no use. I've spoken to teenagers who don't expect to live past 20, and yet leadership doesn't show up for them. Why? Because it's easier to protect the economy than it is to protect empathy, because it's safer to defend borders than it is to defend broken hearts, because when leadership becomes about comfort instead of courage, the vulnerable are the first to be left behind. But you know what I believe? I believe that leadership, real leadership, isn't confined to those at the top. It can come from the bottom up, from the classroom teacher who buys crayons with her own money, from the community organizer who walks door to door reminding people they matter, from the young man who intervenes in a fight even though he could have walked away. That's leadership. That's the kind of courage that doesn't need a microphone but shakes the world anyway. Still, the truth remains: those with institutional power are failing. And until they reckon with the responsibility that comes with that power, until they stop playing politics with people's lives, tragedies will repeat. Gaza will burn again. Another Walmart will turn into a crime scene. Another photo op will overshadow real pain. But we don't have to accept it. We can demand more, we can expect more, we can raise the bar so high that those who choose to lead must also choose to serve. Because leadership isn't about how many people follow you, it's about how many people are safer because you showed. And if you are not showing up for the vulnerable, then don't call yourself a leader. So here we are, standing in the shadow of global headlines, holding the weight of it all: the photo ops, the bombings, the screams inside stores, and the empty silence from the very people we thought would protect us. And after all this, the question becomes, what now? Because it's easy to feel helpless. I felt that way too. When you see the images, Trump in Scotland discussing future strategy, while children in Gaza cry in the rubble, while people run for their lives in a Walmart, it's almost paralyzing. The world feels out of control. The systems feel too big. The leaders feel too distant, and we're left wondering, what difference can I possibly make? But I'm here to remind you of something powerful, something we forget too often. The most extraordinary changes in human history didn't start in castles or conference rooms. They started with people, ordinary people, people who decided in the face of chaos to choose compassion, people who said, I will not become numb, I will not turn away, I will not let pain become normal, and that's our choice now. In this moment when the world feels like it's falling apart, when leadership is failing, when violence is rising, when suffering is being live-streamed and overlooked, we get to decide, will we mirror the chaos or will we rise with compassion? You see, compassion isn't weakness, it's not passive, it's not soft. No, my friend, compassion is a force. It's courage dressed in empathy, it's fire wrapped in love. It's the ability to look at a hurting world and say, you will not suffer alone, not on my watch. And that choice, it starts right where you are. You don't need a podium or a presidency to change lives. You just need presence. You just need heart. You just need to be willing to show up in the places others ignore. You can hold space for grief, whether that grief is a mother's sob in Gaza, or a teenager's panic after a stabbing, or your neighbor's quiet breakdown behind a closed door. You can advocate, whether that means calling your representatives, donating $10 to relief, or using your social media not just for pretty pictures but for purpose. You can protect someone's dignity, whether it's a stranger in line at the grocery store or the friend who's too afraid to ask for help. Because the truth is, while the world's leaders have their priorities tangled in power, we can lead with purpose. We can lead with love. We can build a culture that sees people, that values life, that honors the sacred breath in every human being. But make no mistake, this isn't just about kindness, this is about survival, because the more we allow fear and hate and violence to become the norm, the more we lose ourselves, the more we forget what it means to be human. And I believe deep in my soul that we are better than that. I think about the moments that changed me. It wasn't the glamorous award shows or interviews with famous faces. It was the quiet human moments, a woman who forgave her attacker, a child who shared his sandwich with a hungry classmate, a man who lost everything and still smiled at strangers. Those are the moments that remind me we are still good, even now, even with everything we've seen, even when the world feels heavy, we are still capable of love, we are still capable of healing, we are still capable of compassion, so fierce it burns through the darkness. So no, don't wait for the leaders in castles, don't wait for policies to shift or speeches to change. Be the shift, let your life be a sermon of compassion in a time of cruelty. Smile when you want to cry, speak when you want to hide, help when you feel helpless, and above all, see people, really see them, because the answer isn't out there in the political arena. The answer is you, with your aching heart and your deep empathy, you with your pain and your power, you with your ability to say, even in the rubble, even in the chaos, I will love, I will heal, I will choose compassion. And that choice, that's how we save the world, one soul at a time. My friends, sometimes the world feels like it's shaking under the weight of too many headlines. You wake up, you look at your phone, and it's one thing after another. War, violence, power, pain, and yet through all of it, we still have to choose how we respond. Not just react, but truly respond. There's something deeply stirring about the sight of Donald Trump stepping onto Scottish soil again. This time, though, he's not just checking on one of his golf resorts. He's meeting the British Prime Minister face to face, as if history still owes him a seat at the table. And when you watch that image, two leaders, past and present, standing in a country rich with rebellion and memory, you know something more is happening behind closed doors. We're looking at a political rebirth in real time, a shadow diplomacy that whispers of influence, ambition, and unfinished business. Trump's arrival in Scotland isn't just about nostalgia or European scenery. No, it's a reminder to the world that power doesn't retire, it simply moves. And he is moving strategically, because even in exile from the White House, Trump understands the game. He knows that meeting with the Prime Minister is a move on the global chessboard that forces people to pay attention. It's not about titles, it's about relevance. And relevance, my friends, is the currency of kings. For the British leader, standing next to Trump is both a gamble and a signal. A gamble that she can handle the waves of controversy he brings, and a signal to the world that post-Brexit Britain is still worth negotiating with, even if that negotiation walks in wearing a red tie and talking about American greatness. But while these two figures discuss economics, immigration, and energy corridors with polished smiles and rehearsed nods, I can't help but think about how far removed this scene is from the lives of ordinary people. It's like they're operating in a different universe, one where words are currency and every photo op is a future headline. And that's the dangerous part, isn't it? Because when leaders become too consumed by optics, they forget what it means to lead from the heart. And while Scotland plays host to quiet diplomacy, another part of the world is drowning in something far louder, far more tragic. Because even as the cameras click in Scottish castles in Gaza, there are no cameras catching the tears of a father digging through rubble for his daughter. There's no red carpet rolled out for the mother who hasn't slept in days because each night brings more bombs. What's happening in Gaza isn't just a crisis, it's a humanitarian scream. And we can't pretend not to hear it anymore. We can't scroll past the devastation as if it's just another sad story in a world too full of them. Because every time a child dies in war, humanity loses something it can never get back. I've looked into the eyes of women from war-torn places before, and the pain there isn't just fear, it's a kind of knowing. A knowing that the world may not come for you, that aid may never reach your village, that peace may be just another word politicians say while children cry into their mother's lap. And in Gaza today, that knowing is turning into hopelessness. And that should terrify us all. Because when hope dies, cruelty takes its place. The bombs that fall on hospitals, the strikes on refugee camps, these are not acts of defense. These are cries of power unleashed with no accountability. And every leader sitting in castles or parliaments who remains silent is complicit. Silence in moments like these is a choice. A choice to look away while innocence burns. And yet the cruelty isn't just across oceans. It's right here, in our neighborhoods, in places we once called ordinary. I think about that Walmart, just a regular store on a regular afternoon. Maybe someone was picking up milk. Maybe a teenager was buying school supplies. Maybe a single mother was checking prices on diapers. And then chaos, screams, blood, sirens, another stabbing, another act of violence that turns a community upside down. And you have to ask yourself, how did we get here? It's easy to blame the weapon, or the mental health system, or the criminal record. But I think the real root is something even deeper. It's a sickness of the soul. We are disconnected, numb. We have forgotten how to see each other, truly see each other. We walk past people every day who are silently screaming. And we don't ask, we don't stop, we don't listen, because we are tired, because we are afraid, because we're just trying to survive. But that silence, that neglect, it becomes the seed of tragedy. It grows in quiet corners in isolated lives until one day it bursts. And someone pays for that silence with their life. And as these three moments collide, a global power play in Scotland, a humanitarian tragedy in Gaza, a stabbing in a local Walmart, we're faced with a truth that should shake us. The people who are supposed to protect us are too often protecting their own power instead. The Prime Minister and Trump are calculating political futures. The leaders of powerful nations debate ceasefires while children die. And on the streets of America, there's no plan to save the people bleeding in grocery stores. Leadership has become about image, not impact, about staying in office, not standing for justice. And while leaders pose for headlines, people suffer in silence. But even in all this, I refuse to believe we are powerless. Because we have seen what love can do. We have seen how compassion changes lives. And we are not just bystanders to history, we are writers of it. You may not sit in a parliament or ride in a motorcade, but you hold immense power. The power to listen, the power to speak, the power to choose grace over hatred, to check in on your neighbor, to donate what you can, to raise children who choose peace, to vote for people who still believe in decency, to mourn for Gaza, to show up for your community, to demand better from those who govern, because the answer to chaos is not silence. The answer to war is not apathy. The answer to violence is not fear. It is love. Fierce, courageous, inconvenient love. That's what will turn this tide. That's what will light our way forward. And I know we're tired, we're broken, but we are not done yet. And as long as there is breath in our lungs, we can still choose love. We can still change this world, one act of compassion at a time. But while those castle doors close quietly behind them, Trump and the British Prime Minister inside, sipping from delicate china and measuring every word for its political weight, across the sea in a different kind of world altogether. The cries of Gaza tear through the silence like shattered glass. No polished floors, no press conferences, just dust, blood, and a kind of pain most of us will never truly understand. Because while they talk strategy in tailored suits, someone's mother is clutching the lifeless hand of her child under the rubble of a collapsed apartment. While they nod over trade deals and political futures, a little girl is screaming not because she's hurt, but because she doesn't know where her father is, and because she's seen too much already for her small heart to carry. And I want to tell you the truth, because I believe you can handle it. What's happening in Gaza right now isn't just a conflict. It's not just another battle between governments or factions. It's not just about borders or maps or speeches at the United Nations. What's happening is a moral collapse. It's a moment where the world is being asked one simple question: do we care? Do we care when entire neighborhoods are leveled in minutes? Do we care when schools, hospitals, and refugee camps become targets instead of sanctuary? Do we care when journalists risk their lives to show us the truth, and leaders call it propaganda? And I know it's complicated. I've heard that said so many times it echoes in my sleep. The situation is complicated, but you know what's not complicated? The value of a human life. The right of a child to sleep through the night without fearing the sky will fall. The right of a mother to prepare breakfast instead of funeral prayers. That is not complicated. That is basic, sacred, human. I remember once sitting with a woman who had fled war, holding her hands while she trembled, and told me about the moment she chose to run. She said, when the door blew off our house, I didn't grab my purse. I grabbed my hand. It struck me, when your world crumbles, you don't think about politics. You think about survival. That's the raw truth people in Gaza live with every hour. They're not discussing ceasefire conditions. They're wondering if they'll see tomorrow. And yet, we're told to stay neutral. We're told to be cautious, to wait for official reports. But I ask you, how neutral can you be when the footage shows a baby covered in dust, her body still, her mother screaming her name? How cautious should we be when hospitals lose power and doctors operate by flashlight, trying to save lives with no medicine, no supplies, no hope? We can't afford the luxury of silence anymore, because silence is not neutral, it's a side. And when we stay quiet in the face of this kind of suffering, we're siding with oppression, with cruelty, with indifference. And I know you feel it too, that heaviness in your chest when you scroll through your phone and see those images, the faces, the bodies, the greed. That's your humanity talking. That's your soul reminding you, this is not okay. So while power talks in castles, and leaders calculate political outcomes like chess moves, Gaza cries, loudly, desperately, and we must listen, because every voice raised in sorrow is a voice worth hearing. And if we can't hear them, then we've lost more than just our compassion. We've lost our purpose. This isn't about choosing sides in a war. This is about choosing to stand with the innocent. It's about saying, we see you, we mourn with you, and we will not forget you. And just as the cries from Gaza echo across oceans, a different kind of cry rises closer to home. Less publicized, less politicized, but no less tragic. It doesn't come from war zones or foreign conflicts. It comes from a place we all know, Walmart. Yes, Walmart. A place that sells baby formula, canned soup, school notebooks, and scented candles. A place where a mother might run in for detergent, where a grandfather might browse for batteries, a place that should feel safe, ordinary, but on that day, it wasn't. It started like any other afternoon, shoppers walking the aisles, pushing carts, a teenager standing by the electronics section, a toddler whining near the candy rack, a young employee restocking shelves, and then in a moment that changed everything, chaos erupted, a stabbing, screams, panic, blood, people running, ducking, covering their children, fumbling for their phones, not knowing if they were next. And when I heard the story, my heart broke open, because what hurts the most isn't just the violence itself, it's the normalcy of it now. We've become numb, conditioned. We hear about another act of violence in public, and we don't gasp anymore, we just sigh. Again, we say, and move on. But what's happening in these aisles and parking lots is a symptom, my friends, a symptom of something far more dangerous than any one incident. What's unraveling is our emotional infrastructure. We are a nation in emotional collapse. People are walking around with invisible wounds, anxious, angry, isolated. We are overstimulated but underconnected, tethered to our phones, but disconnected from each other's pain. We scroll through images of tragedy between updates on sports scores and makeup tutorials. We see the pain, but do we feel it? And that's what this stabbing at Walmart reflects. It's not just about one man's rage or one act of cruelty. It's about a society that has stopped seeing one another, where mental illness festers in silence, where desperation becomes aggression, where someone can walk into a store full of strangers and erupt because somewhere along the line, they forgot how to be human, and maybe no one noticed until it was too late. I want to be clear, I'm not excusing violence, but I am begging us to understand where it's coming from, because if we keep treating the symptoms, locking the doors, hiring more guards, adding more surveillance, without treating the disease, we will keep ending up here. The disease is disconnection. The disease is isolation. The disease is a culture that values convenience over community, speed over empathy, survival over wellness. And it's killing us quietly, gradually, tragically. I've spoken with mothers who've lost sons to street violence, with teachers who've watched their students collapse under the weight of depression, with first responders who say the pain they see now is deeper than it was a decade ago. People are cracking, one officer told me, and it's like no one sees them until they explode. So what do? We start small, we look up, we make eye contact, we ask, "Are you okay?" and mean it. We build circles of care around the lonely and the lost. We advocate for mental health resources, not just for extreme cases, but for everyone. We change the question from "what's wrong with you" to "what happened to you," because everyone's carrying something. And sometimes just being seen is the beginning of healing. The stabbing at Walmart is more than a crime, it's a mirror, and we have to be brave enough to look into it, to see not only the fear but also the fragility of our culture, the urgency to repair, to reconnect. And as we turn back to the bigger picture, from the shadows of castles in Scotland, to the ruins of Gaza, to a Walmart aisle in Middle America, what becomes clear is this: the distance between power and people has never been greater, and the cost is being paid in blood, tears, and trauma by people who simply wanted to live their lives in peace. But we can no longer wait for leaders to fix it. The work is ours now. Because if we can't find a way to heal right here in our towns, our neighborhoods, our stores, then all the political meetings and peace talks in the world won't matter.